Do not rush past this moment. What has reached you today is here with purpose, and it is far more than another voice competing for your attention. I am your God, and I am speaking to you now. Before anything else unfolds, stay with me and listen. What is drawing near is real, and it is closer than you realize. I would never call your attention this earnestly over something insignificant, and I am not speaking to awaken fear. I am speaking because I love you enough to prepare you before the moment arrives. Fear has never been my way of leading you, but when someone receives a warning in love, they walk with greater wisdom than someone who never saw it coming. Receive this warning as an act of kindness, because that is exactly what it is. Earlier today, something within you paused. There was a quiet tightening in your spirit, a moment when everything around you seemed to slow, and you almost convinced yourself it meant nothing. It was not your imagination. I was gently stirring your awareness, and you were right to notice it. You have become skilled at explaining away what your spirit first recognizes. You tell yourself it is anxiety or overthinking because you have learned to keep moving, believing that slowing down somehow means weakness. My child, I am asking something different of you today. Just for a little while, become still enough to hear my voice. There was a time when I awakened a man in the middle of the night while a small child rested nearby. My child him today, rise and leave. Yet I did not reveal every detail of what lay ahead. He did not argue, delay, or wait for daylight to make sense of my words. He trusted me in the darkness, and because he obeyed, the life placed in his care was preserved. That is often how I work. I speak before danger arrives, while there is still time to respond. The instruction I give can seem small compared to what it is quietly protecting you from, and many people dismiss it because they cannot yet see its purpose. I am not placing a puzzle before you. I am telling you plainly that a moment is approaching which will ask something of your heart. It may come through a decision, an ordinary conversation, or even a single sentence waiting on your lips. How you respond in that moment will matter more than you can see today. You have already endured difficult seasons, and I know what it feels like when life has left deep marks on your heart. Listen carefully. This is not punishment. I am giving you understanding before the moment arrives, so you will recognize it instead of being overwhelmed by it. I do not set traps for those I love, nor do I design tests to watch you fail. There is simply an uneven place ahead, and I have chosen to walk beside you through it instead of leaving you to face it alone. I know how tired you are. I know there have been days when you kept smiling after your strength was gone. I know there have been prayers you carried in silence because you no longer had the energy to speak them aloud. I have seen every quiet tear, every heavy mourning, every time you kept going while your heart was still healing. That is one reason I am speaking now, because weariness can dull your ability to hear me. When someone has carried burdens for a long time, they often begin living by habit instead of attentiveness. Habit will not serve you well in the moment that is coming. So let me sharpen your spirit not through panic, but through peaceful awareness. Slow your breathing. Let your shoulders relax. Stay here with me for a moment, and allow the noise inside your mind to settle until you can recognize the voice that has been beneath every other voice all along. That voice has remained with you longer than any fear, any opinion, or any circumstance. It has never deceived you. There is something else I want you to understand. This warning is not only about protecting you from harm. There is already something beautiful beginning to grow within your life. It is still young. It is still tender. What is approaching has the potential to press against it before it has grown strong. Perhaps you cannot even name that new beginning yet. Maybe it is a door that has only just begun to open, a wounded place that is quietly healing, or a hope you have been afraid to speak because it feels too precious to risk. I see it clearly. I planted it, myself, and I will not allow a careless moment to steal what I have begun. So my instruction is simple, my beloved. Stay attentive, move without hurry, remain close to me. Those three choices will carry you safely through what is ahead, while preserving everything I have already placed into your hands. I have never expected you to carry your life by your own strength, and I am not asking that of you now. I have already walked where you have not yet arrived. I have already seen the bend in the road that is still hidden from your eyes, and nothing waiting there is greater than my hand. Understand who is speaking to you. I am not a distant God who watches your struggles from far away. I come near. I step into your circumstances. I interrupt paths that would lead my children toward danger, and I have never regretted doing so. Many people want me to hand them the entire map before they trust me enough to take the next step. But if I showed you every detail, your confidence would rest in the map instead of the one leading you. So I give you enough light for today, and I invite you to trust the hand carrying that light. Right now, before your thoughts begin arguing, let your spirit quietly agree with me. Let the part of you that has always recognized my voice answer before your reasoning catches up. That simple surrender becomes the doorway through which everything else I want to say can enter your heart. If you believe my voice is reaching you in this moment, say Amen out loud. Now let me help you recognize what to watch for, because you may be expecting the wrong kind of warning. You imagine something dramatic, something obvious enough that everyone would notice it. Yet that is rarely how difficulty arrives. The moments that require the greatest discernment often appear ordinary. They wear familiar faces. They arrive during everyday conversations, hidden inside situations that seem completely normal. What comes toward you may even look like relief. It may resemble an answer you have been praying for, or a door finally opening after a long season of waiting. That is precisely why discernment matters. After waiting so long for something to change, it becomes easy to celebrate the open door without first asking who opened it. Listen to one story from my word, because I want this truth to settle deeply within you. When my people entered the land I had promised them, a group came to meet them wearing worn-out sandals. Their bread was dry, their clothes were patched, and every detail supported the story they told. By every outward appearance, their account seemed believable. My people saw the worn sandals. They noticed the stale bread, the patched clothing, and everything before their eyes seemed to confirm the story they had been told. It all appeared reasonable, so they entered into an agreement with those travelers without hesitation. Then my word reveals in only a few simple words why everything went wrong. They never asked me. That was the whole matter. They were not rebelling against me, nor had they turned away from me in hatred. The evidence looked so convincing that seeking my counsel seemed unnecessary. The sandals appeared old. The bread appeared dry. What else was there to question? Yet those people had never come from a distant land at all. They had been living only a short distance away. The worn sandals were part of a disguise, and because my people trusted what their eyes could explain, they carried the consequences of that decision for generations. I am telling you this because you will soon face a moment that also seems obvious. Everything may appear to fit together, and your mind will quickly reach a conclusion that feels comfortable and logical. But the question in that moment will never be whether you are intelligent enough. The question will be whether you stopped long enough to ask me. So ask me, my child. Speak to me if you need to. Even a few quiet words are enough. Even a single breath turned toward me while you are deciding reaches my heart. I am never difficult to find, and when an answer is needed urgently, I am never slow to respond. There is something I want you to understand about what feels familiar. You often mistake familiarity for safety, yet they are not the same thing. Familiar only means you have encountered something before. There are patterns that have returned throughout your life, each wearing a slightly different face while reaching for the same vulnerable place inside you. You may struggle to explain those patterns with words, but somewhere deep within you, you already recognize them. Perhaps it is a certain kind of person. Perhaps it is an offer that seems attractive or a familiar pressure that once cost you dearly. What is returning is not coming to destroy you. It is revealing whether you have grown since the last time you faced it, and you have. That is the truth you keep forgetting. You still measure yourself against the version of you that stood in this place before, but that measure no longer tells the truth. I have strengthened something within you since then. You are not standing here as the same person you once were. The pattern may look familiar, but the heart facing it has changed. Now let me speak about your words, because this is where your greatest vulnerability may be. A moment is coming when you will feel a strong desire to answer quickly. Someone may say something unfair. Someone may question your character or imply something that is simply untrue. Before you even realize it, a response may already be forming inside you. That impulse does not come from me. I once watched a young king lose a kingdom because of one careless answer. His people came asking for relief from their burdens. Older and wiser voices urged him to respond with gentleness, but he chose instead to follow those who equated harshness with strength. Before that day ended, the kingdom had been divided, and the damage remained long after his words were spoken. I am not asking you to remain silent forever. I am asking you to become slow before you speak. Between what happens to you and the words that leave your mouth, there is a quiet space. That space is where much of your protection lives. Many people surrender it without realizing its value. I am asking you to guard it carefully. You do not owe every person an explanation simply because they demand one. You do not have to defend a life that I am already defending. Listen to those words again until they settle inside you. Lay down that burden. I have carried your name far longer than you have carried your fear. Silence is not surrender. When you choose peace under pressure, you are not losing the moment. You are refusing to hand over the very reaction that someone else may be trying to provoke. Once that reaction is withheld, the situation loses much of its power. I know how difficult this can be because I know your heart. You long to be understood. You want the truth to be recognized. There are situations you have carried for a long time where you still hope someone will finally admit that you were right. For now, release that weight into my hands. I keep a more faithful record than anyone else, and every account will be settled in its proper time. There is a strength in restraint that the world often overlooks. From the outside, it can appear as though nothing is happening, as though you simply walked away. Yet the one who remains steady in the face of provocation possesses something that cannot be stolen by force. That quiet strength is what I am inviting you to carry through the days ahead. Stay watchful. Ask me. Wait before you answer. If you are trusting me in this moment, speak your amen. There is another way you can recognize my voice among all the others pressing against you. Learn this well, and it will protect you from many forms of deception. I do not drive you with panic. Read those words again, and let them settle into your heart. Throughout your life I have called you, corrected you, and invited you to follow me, but I have never stood over you demanding an immediate answer. When something insists that you must decide this very second, before you have prayed, before you have reflected, before you have rested, that pressure does not come from me. Urgency and clarity are not the same thing. Urgency tightens your chest and narrows your thinking. Clarity creates room to breathe. Even when you cannot yet see the entire outcome, peace remains present enough for you to take the next faithful step. Let that become one of your measures. When pressure begins closing in around you, step back for a moment and bring it before me. Whatever is truly from me will still be there after you have prayed. Anything that cannot survive an honest pause was never meant for your hands. My child, I want you to hear me today. I want you to hear me a portion of what you have upon the altar of this work. Let it become an offering given in faith, not withheld because of fear. In doing so, you show that your confidence rests in my provision rather than in your own ability to hold tightly to what you possess. What you release into my hands through faith is not lost. It moves ahead into the harvest I am preparing. Now let me show you how my voice often comes, because you have been listening for the wrong kind of sound. There was a prophet of mine who had run until every ounce of strength was gone. He stood at the edge of despair, and I called him to a mountain because I was about to pass by. First came a wind so powerful it shattered the rocks around him. Yet I was not in the wind. Then the earth trembled beneath his feet, but I was not in the earthquake. Fire swept through after that, and still my voice was absent. Then everything became quiet. After the noise had finished speaking, there was only a gentle whisper. That was where I was. Pause there for a moment. The greatest display of power he had ever witnessed was not the place where my voice was found. Heaven made room to speak only after the noise had fallen silent. That is often how I come to you as well. You have been waiting for me to arrive with overwhelming force, while all along I have been speaking beneath the surface of your heart in a voice so gentle that you kept dismissing it. The whisper you thought was too quiet to matter is the very answer you have been asking me to give. I want you to notice something about the way I created you. There is a quiet knowing I have placed within you that often recognizes the truth before your mind can explain it. Your mind gathers evidence, weighs arguments, and searches for reasons. Your spirit moves differently. It often knows before it can prove why it knows. More times than you realize, that quiet witness has been right. Yet whenever your mind and your spirit disagree, you usually trust the voice that can offer an explanation. You do this because your mind knows how to defend its conclusions, while your spirit often remains silent except for a simple conviction. But an explanation is not the same as truth. Your thoughts can build a convincing case for a choice that eventually brings pain, while your spirit may simply whisper, "No," without offering a single argument in return. Learn to value that quiet witness. It has been with you longer than your reasoning, and it remains closer to me. Let me remind you of a man who was traveling down a road he should never have taken. The animal beneath him suddenly stopped and refused to move. He struck it, and it went forward only a little before pressing him against a wall. Angry and frustrated, he struck it again. When it lay down beneath him a third time, he could not understand why it would go no farther. What he could not see was what the animal had already seen. One of my messengers stood in the road with a drawn sword, and the resistance he was fighting was the very thing preserving his life. His anger was directed at the instrument of his own rescue. My child, there have been moments in your life when something inside you refused to move forward, and you forced yourself ahead anyway. You told yourself you were simply afraid. You wondered whether your hesitation meant your faith was weak. Because you have been praised for pushing through obstacles, you believed every resistance had to be overcome. But hear me carefully. Some of that resistance came from me. Not every hesitation is my voice, because fear is real, and fear can deceive. Yet there is a difference between fear that shrinks your world and the quiet restraint that firmly plants its feet. By now you have experienced both often enough to begin recognizing the difference. If you encounter that quiet restraint again, do not force yourself into motion. Pause for a moment. Ask me what stands in the path before you. I do not hide my heart from those who sincerely seek my wisdom. And if my answer does not come immediately, do not mistake my silence for absence. Sometimes my silence is already speaking. Sometimes it simply means wait. Waiting is not empty. Waiting is an act of trust, and often it is the strongest response available to you. For many years you believed that being still meant giving up. It never did. Remaining steady while everything around you demands movement requires far greater strength than simply following the current. Anyone could be carried along by pressure. Only someone firmly anchored can remain in place. You are anchored, and I place that anchor far deeper than your eyes can see. That is why the pressure surrounding this season may move circumstances without moving you. I told you earlier that something good is already growing in your life, and I want to return to that, because protecting it is one reason I am speaking with you today. You have spent so much time noticing what is broken that you have overlooked what has quietly begun to heal. Something new has already started. It is still hidden, it has not yet produced visible results, and because you cannot point to it, you have not fully recognized its value. That is often how my work begins. The things I build rarely appear fully formed. They begin quietly, beneath the surface where only I can see what is taking shape. A seed disappears into the ground before anyone sees life emerging. For a time it appears as though nothing is happening, yet beneath the soil the greatest work is already underway. Do not dismiss small beginnings simply because they look insignificant. Too often you assume that if something truly came from me, it would arrive complete. But everything I build grows with patience. It begins in hidden places before it becomes visible. Remember the woman who had reached the end of every human solution. Debt had overtaken her household, and the people she loved most were about to be taken from her. All she possessed was a single jar containing a little oil. Through my prophet I instructed her to gather every empty vessel she could find, not just a few, but as many as possible. Then she was told to go inside, close the door behind her, and begin pouring. Notice the closed door. What I was about to do was never meant to become a public spectacle. Behind that quiet door, the oil continued flowing until every empty vessel had been filled. It stopped only when there was nothing left to receive it. Her debt was paid, and those she loved were preserved. There are two truths I want you to carry from that story. The first is that what she held in her hand was never the true limitation. The greater question was how much room she was willing to prepare for what I desired to provide. The second is that the miracle grew in private. There are things developing in your life that also need the protection of a closed door. not because they are hidden in shame, but because they are still tender. New life flourishes in quiet places. It needs time before it needs attention, so be careful about announcing every beginning before it has taken root. Too often you have shared the most delicate things I have entrusted to you with people who have never truly rejoiced in your growth, and afterward you wondered why your joy seemed to fade. Guard what I have planted. Continue pouring in private. Allow the fruit to speak when the season is right. As what I am building becomes stronger, another challenge will come, but it will not arrive looking like opposition. It will come looking like an invitation. There was a man rebuilding the broken walls of a city he loved. After years of ruin, the work was finally moving forward. His enemies realized they could not stop the work through force, so they chose another strategy. They sent him a friendly invitation, "Come down and meet with us. Let us talk." Just one conversation. Again and again they invited him, and each time he answered with the same words, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down." He was not speaking from pride or refusing kindness. He simply understood what you also need to understand. There are moments when remaining where I have placed you is the most faithful answer you can give. There was nothing wrong with the plane itself. The problem was that the work I had given him was on the wall, and every step away from that wall carried him farther from the assignment I had entrusted to him. My child, there will be invitations placed before you as well. They will seem reasonable. They may even sound overdue. Someone will suggest a conversation, encourage you to revisit an old situation, or convince you that now is finally the time to address something you left behind. Everything about those invitations may sound sensible enough that saying no feels almost unkind. But before you answer, ask yourself one question. Does this draw me closer to what God has asked me to do, or does it quietly pull me away from it? That is the question that matters. Whether something appears fair or whether someone believes they deserve your response is not the true measure. You are not required to attend every meeting that calls your name. You are not obligated to answer every accusation or defend yourself in every disagreement simply to prove you could have won. Stay where I have placed you. Remain on the wall. I know this is difficult because you have spent much of your life believing that love always means being available. You answer the phone. You show up. You explain yourself. Being unavailable has often felt like being uncaring, but every season requires something different. There is a time for open hands, and there is also a time to close the door, so that what I am building can continue without distraction. I am telling you plainly that this is that season. Those who truly love you will still be there when the work is finished. Those whose only desire was to pull you away from it will eventually lose interest. Even their departure will teach you something valuable that you could not have learned any other way. Now let me speak to the weariness you have been carrying. I know both the closed door and the wall require strength that you sometimes feel you no longer possess. You have carried responsibilities that few people have noticed. You have remained steady in rooms where no one ever stopped to ask whether you were the one holding yourself together. Somewhere along the way, you began believing that if you loosened your grip, everything around you would fall apart. My child, that is not the truth. I am the one who is holding you. You are resting against a strength that has never depended on your own. You may unclench your hands without fearing that the world will collapse beneath you. So allow yourself to rest tonight. Not because every difficulty has already passed, but because rest is one of the ways I prepare you for what comes next. Someone who is exhausted often makes hurried decisions. Someone who is rested knows how to wait with wisdom. I would rather meet you with a peaceful heart than with impressive exhaustion. What I am nurturing in your life deserves that kind of care. I would never speak to you with this much urgency over something without value. The depth of my warning reveals the worth of what I am protecting. That is why I am speaking to you with such tenderness and such clarity. Now let me tell you something about the prayers you believed disappeared into silence. Stay with me here, because this truth may change the way you look back on the past several years of your life. There was a man who prayed earnestly for understanding and then waited. Day after day passed without an answer. 3 weeks came and went. He ate very little, remained faithful in prayer, and eventually began wondering whether heaven had heard him at all. When the answer finally arrived, it carried an explanation he had never imagined. He was told that his prayer had been heard on the very first day, not weeks later, but immediately. The answer had been sent without delay, yet resistance stood in its path before it reached him. Pause there for a moment, my beloved. For 21 days he believed heaven was silent, yet heaven had responded within hours. What looked like my absence was never abandonment. The resistance was against the answer, not against the prayer itself. When that resistance continued, I sent help, and the message reached him exactly as I intended. I am reminding you of this because there is a prayer that immediately came to your mind as you listened. You know which one it is. Perhaps you stopped bringing it before me because repeating it became more painful than remaining silent. Perhaps you quietly decided that no answer meant no response. But silence does not always mean refusal. Some of what you have placed into my hands has been moving all along through places you cannot yet see. There have been battles surrounding the answer that I never asked you to fight. While you were watching only the waiting, I was already working beyond what your eyes could reach. Do not build your understanding of me only from what is visible. You are looking through one small window and trying to describe the entire house. There is always more taking place than you can presently see. Remember the servant who awoke one morning and found the city surrounded. Horses, chariots, and soldiers stood on every side. Fear rushed into his heart, and he ran to the prophet asking what they were going to do. Yet the prophet remained completely at peace. He simply asked me to open the young man's eyes. When I did, everything changed, not because the battlefield changed, but because his vision did. The hills beyond the enemy were already filled with horses and chariots of fire. The help had been there all along, even while he was afraid. That is often closer to your own story than you realize. You have carefully counted every obstacle standing before you, yet you have rarely stopped to count the resources I have already placed around you. You know your problems in great detail, but you have not always remembered the greatness of the one who is standing with you. You have spent too much time living as though you must always be prepared for the next blow, when I have called you to stand with quiet confidence instead. There have been nights when circumstances suddenly shifted in your favor, and you never discovered why. A situation that seemed certain to overwhelm you simply lost its strength. Someone determined to harm you quietly disappeared from your path. A threat came close enough to frighten you, yet it stopped before it could touch you. You called it luck. You called it a narrow escape. My child, it was neither. There have been times when I settled an entire matter while you slept, and morning arrived with everything changed before you ever lifted a hand. I do not ask you to keep fighting battles I have already brought to an end. Stop rehearsing victories that have already been won on your behalf. There are struggles you continue replaying in your thoughts, even though I have already spoken the final word over them. Now listen carefully about those who have stood against you. There was once a man who built a towering structure because hatred had filled his heart. He measured it carefully, raised it high for everyone to see, and went to sleep believing his plans were complete. Yet before another day had ended, the very thing he had prepared for someone else became the instrument of his own downfall. I did not have to create a new answer. The outcome was already hidden within the work of his own hands. That is often how evil unfolds. Malice eventually turns back upon itself. Left long enough, it begins destroying the one who built it. I do not have to force that to happen. So take your eyes off those who have wronged you. You have spent years giving your thoughts to people who no longer deserve even a moment of your attention. You have replayed conversations that never happened, delivered speeches only inside your own mind, and carried old wounds until they became painfully familiar. Every minute spent there is time taken from the life I have placed before you, and quietly handed to people who may never even know they still occupy your thoughts. Leave them with me. I know how to deal with every heart far better than you do, and I do so without bitterness or impulse. There is another truth I want you to hear, and it may be harder to accept than anything else I have said. What was meant to wound you has not remained only a wound. More than once I have taken an act of cruelty and transformed it into the doorway through which my purpose entered someone's life. Remember the young man sold by those closest to him and carried away into a foreign land in chains. Years later he stood before the very people who had betrayed him, holding authority instead of resentment. He did not deny that what they had done was cruel. He called it exactly what it was. Yet he also testified that I had taken what they intended for evil and worked it toward good. I am not asking you to pretend your pain was beautiful. It was not. I am not asking you to rename your wounds as blessings. What I am telling you is that I am able to take what others meant to destroy and weave it into a purpose they never imagined and never intended. That is something far greater than simply excusing what happened. So remain where you are. Release the burden of defending yourself. You do not have to carry a life that I am already carrying. The path before you has already been walked by me. The resistance you cannot see is already being met by hands stronger than yours. And what is coming has no authority to take away what I have chosen to preserve. If your faith is still standing, let your amen be heard. Now let me tell you about what waits on the other side of this season, because there is another side, and you will reach it. The pressure will not last forever. What has been drawing near will either pass through or pass by, and you will notice the change before your thoughts even catch up. Your body will recognize it first. Something inside your chest will finally relax, and only then will you realize how tightly you had been holding yourself for so many days. That is the moment when you must remain attentive, because many people lose their watchfulness after the hardest part is over. They faithfully guard the gate through the darkness and then leave it unguarded at daybreak. There are two things that often arrive after a difficult season, and I want you to recognize them before they appear. The first is doubt after obedience. You will begin replaying every decision. You will wonder whether you were too cautious, whether you misunderstood my warning, or whether you missed an opportunity that should have been yours. Your thoughts will search for details you overlooked and questions you never asked. Understand where that cloud comes from. It does not come from me. I do not lead you with clarity and then reward your obedience with confusion. When I correct you, my correction is clear enough for you to recognize. But when a haze of uncertainty settles over a decision you made while trusting me, that fog was never sent from my presence. You obeyed. Let the matter rest. The second temptation is quieter, and because it feels harmless, it catches even strong people. You will begin feeling drawn back toward the very thing you left behind. It will not feel like open rebellion. It will feel like harmless curiosity. You may quietly wonder whether you judged too quickly, whether you should try one more time, or whether there was still something worth returning to. That is one of the oldest strategies the enemy uses, and it succeeds because it rarely arrives looking dangerous. It comes disguised as an unanswered question. Remember when I brought my people out of the land where they had suffered for generations. Before long, they found themselves remembering the food they had eaten there. They spoke about cucumbers, melons, onions, and garlic with longing, even though they had spent those same years crying beneath the weight of slavery. That is what familiarity does to memory. It edits the story. It preserves the comfort while quietly erasing the chains. So when your thoughts begin painting a gentle picture of something that once wounded you deeply, recognize what is happening. You are not simply remembering the past. Something is inviting you back toward it. Do not return, my beloved. What you walked away from was never a mistake waiting to be corrected. It was a door that closed with purpose, and I closed it together with you. Now listen to the hopeful part, because I did not lead you through a narrow place only to leave you there. Whenever you release what was never meant to remain in your hands, an empty space is created. At first, that space will feel uncomfortable because you have grown used to holding on, even to things that were quietly draining you. But that emptiness is not a problem, my child. It is a place I am preparing, so do not rush to fill it simply because waiting feels unfamiliar. What I am bringing is better than what is left, and my timing never needs to hurry. I am already setting things in motion. There is provision. I am moving according to my purpose, because it was never meant to remain where it has been. There are burdens you have carried for years, but time does not make them permanent. The pressure that has drained your strength will not last forever, and one day you will notice that peace has quietly taken its place. I also see the weariness that sleep alone cannot heal, and I am restoring you. Strength will return so gently that one morning you will simply realize the heaviness is gone. Those you love are not forgotten. I know every name you have whispered to me, and every silent prayer you have carried. I see the whole household, and my work in your life reaches beyond you. There is also a door you stopped checking because it stayed closed for so long. I am opening it at the right time, and you are not the same person who once stood before it. You now have the wisdom to walk through it well. When this season passes, do not ignore your need for rest. Remember my prophet who collapsed beneath the tree in the wilderness. I restored him with food, sleep, and time before speaking about the journey ahead. That is often how I restore my children, so receive rest without guilt. You are not weak because you need it. Living things recover, and I am not finished with you. This season is only one part of a much longer journey. What I am teaching you now is becoming part of who you are, because there will come a day when recognizing my voice matters even more. Remember the young servant who heard me calling but mistook my voice for another. He was not resisting me. He simply had not learned to recognize me yet. When he finally answered, "Speak, for your servant is listening," he walked with that discernment for the rest of his life. Everyone who hears me clearly once struggled to do so. You also spent years knocking on the wrong doors while still carrying my prompting. Those years were not wasted. They taught you how to recognize my voice. Today, when I speak, something within you already knows. Look again at how I work. I spoke to one man on a rooftop and, at the same time, to another man in a different town. Neither knew the other, yet I arranged every step until they met exactly where my purpose required. That is how I work. I hold every part of the story at once, even when you can only see one small piece. If you have wondered whether my goodness reaches into your own life and circumstances, it does. You have never been outside my care. I am not teaching you to live cautiously. I am teaching you to become useful in my hands. One of my prophets once heard me ask, "Whom shall I send? Whom shall I send?" Though he knew his own weakness, he answered, "Here I am. Send me." That question is still being asked. What you have learned in this season, pausing, asking, refusing to be rushed, is not only for your protection. It is preparing you to steady others who will face the same uncertainty you once knew. You are becoming the person you once needed. So carry these lessons with you. When something feels rushed, slow down. When something is unclear, wait. When something feels wrong, bring it before me. Those simple habits will protect you more faithfully than any strategy of your own. Now receive what I place over your life. May my covering remain over your coming and going. May every plan against you lose its strength. May pressure release its grip. Doors open in my timing and provision find you in unexpected ways. May your mind know peace. Your body carry its work with strength. Your judgment remain clear, and your home become a place where my presence is welcomed, and weary hearts find rest. May the work of your hands endure, and may these words remain with you, not simply as a moving moment, but as something that changes the way you walk. The season ahead is real, yet you will not face it alone. I have already gone before you, seen what lies ahead, and measured it against what I have placed within you. You will come through this stronger and steadier than before. Lift up your head, my beloved. Release the tension you have been carrying. Breathe deeply and remember that I cared enough to prepare you before this moment arrived. Walk patiently, keep your ears open, and let your words remain unhurried. Every step ahead is a place where I am already waiting. Do not measure what is growing by how quiet it is. Quiet does not mean weak. Often it means protected. What I shelter, I also sustain. You do not need to force it into the light or prove it to anyone. Simply care for what I have entrusted to you, trust me with it, and guard it from distractions. As this season passes, you will notice quiet confirmations, conversations that unfold naturally, provision arriving without striving, and clarity replacing confusion. They will not come with spectacle, but as gentle reminders that I have been working while you were waiting. I am still shaping you, and I am still preparing what lies ahead. Walk with the same attentiveness I have taught you, and what once felt like survival will become faithful stewardship. I am with you through every step. If your heart trusts me today, say your Amen, and let it be the first word of the season ahead. If this message has encouraged your faith and you would like to support this work, you can use the QR code or the support link in the description. God bless you.